The security chief approached James. "This is for real veterans only." James just smiled. 3 hours later, that same man would be running to salute him. But what happened in those 3 hours? On a cold November morning, the main square of Thornfield was preparing for the Veterans Day ceremony. Red, white, and blue ribbons danced in the wind as elderly veterans in uniform took their places. Everyone's eyes sparkled with pride, medals on their chests, honor badges on their shoulders. James Carter quietly approached from the edge of the square. He was 52, medium height, with calm facial features. He wore a faded blue jacket, dark pants, and old shoes, none bearing any military insignia. He held white carnations in his hands, and there was deep sadness in his eyes. He walked with a slight limp. In his left leg were traces of shrapnel from 12 years ago in the mountains of Afghanistan. But no one knew this. James had never told anyone about that day, how he went behind enemy lines alone to save 6 friends, how he carried them to safety despite being wounded. "Stop!" a harsh voice echoed. David Thompson was the ceremony's security chief and a self-important man. 45 years old, overweight, and always spoke loudly. He had never served in the military, but claimed to know every veteran's story. "Who are you?" Thompson planted himself in front of James. "This ceremony is for real veterans only. Do you have an invitation?" James replied calmly, "I'm also a veteran. I just came to honor my friends." Thompson rolled his eyes. "Yeah, right. You're also a veteran. Where did you serve? Which unit? Which war?" "I served in the British Special Forces," James said simply. "British?" Thompson laughed dismissively. "This is an American Veterans Day ceremony. You came to the wrong place, buddy. Besides," he cast his eyes over James's plain clothes. "Real veterans wear their medals, put on their uniforms. You're just ordinary." People around began watching the situation. Some were whispering. A slight flush appeared on James's cheeks, but he didn't raise his voice. "Please, I just want to honor my friends," he repeated. "Your friends?" Thompson's voice grew harsher. "Fake veterans always tell the same story. I came to honor my friends. You didn't lose anyone because you never even fought." But James had never told anyone the truth, because the truth was too heavy. That day, in Afghanistan's Helmand province, the SAS unit had been ambushed. James, with the rank of captain, was leading his team. In the bomb attack, he had lost 6 friends. He repeated their names in his mind every night. David Mills, 28 years old. Sarah Coleman, 31 years old. Marcus Wright, 24 years old. "Look, buddy," Thompson's voice was now threatening, "this ceremony is for real heroes. You go play games somewhere else." James looked at the flowers in his hands. White carnations, each chosen for a lost friend. He quietly turned and began to walk away. But right at this point, everything was about to change. On the other side of the square, an elderly man named Colonel Robert Hayes was watching the situation. He was 70, a retired colonel with 40 years of military experience. For many years, he had participated in joint operations with British SAS units. Hayes had noticed that distinctive discipline in James's walk, that military bearing in his posture. Especially James's slight limp in his left leg reminded him of something. "Thompson!" Hayes shouted in a stern voice. "Why did you kick that man out?" Thompson grinned. "Ah, Colonel Hayes, another fake veteran. He claimed to be British. This is an American ceremony, isn't it?" Hayes frowned. He said, "British?" What was he like? Ordinary guy. Old clothes, no medals, no ID, limped a bit. His name was something like James Carter. Hayes' face suddenly turned white. "Did you say James Carter?" "Yes, I think so. Why?" Hayes began to run. His 70-year-old body was moving at full speed. "James! James Carter!" he shouted as he ran. Thompson stared after him in confusion. "What's happening?" At the exit of the square, James stopped. He had heard someone calling from behind. Slowly he turned, and when his eyes saw Hayes, they widened. "Colonel Hayes," James whispered almost inaudibly. "James Carter." My God, is it really you? Hayes stood breathlessly in front of James. I thought you had disappeared after the Helmand operation. James bowed his head. I preferred to live quietly, sir. Quietly? Hayes's eyes filled with tears. Are you the James Carter from Operation Blackwater? James only nodded in confirmation. Meanwhile, people around began to gather. Thompson also approached, with growing anxiety on his face. Hayes began speaking loudly. People, this man is James Carter. He was one of SAS's bravest officers. In 2012 in Afghanistan, he went behind enemy lines alone to save 6 of his men. The crowd was growing. Everyone was hearing Hayes's words. That day, Hayes continued, James's team was ambushed. 6 soldiers were wounded and in danger. James, alone under gunfire, reached them. One by one, he carried them to safety on his back. Thompson's face was getting paler and paler. But the story doesn't end there. Hayes's voice was now echoing throughout the square. While James was saving the last man, a bomb exploded. Despite shrapnel piercing his leg, he saved that 6th man too, losing his own blood. James stood quietly. His eyes were looking at the ground, his hands slightly trembling. Hayes continued. After saving 6 people, James lost consciousness. He was in a coma for 3 weeks in the hospital. When he woke up, the first thing he said was, "Is everyone okay?" Now everyone in the square was listening silently. Some people's eyes were filled with tears. James Carter, Hayes's voice was now trembling, was personally honored by the Queen with the Victoria Cross. This medal is the highest military honor given for bravery. Only those who show exceptional heroism can receive it. Thompson could barely breathe now. All the townspeople's eyes were on him. Hayes pulled out a small photograph from his pocket. This photo was taken with the 6 men James saved that day. Those 6 people are alive today. They have families, children. Thanks to James. He showed the photo to the crowd. In the photo, a young James with bandages on his arm was smiling with 6 soldiers. And this man, Hayes pointed at James, came here today to honor his friends. Because in that mission, there were other SAS teams too, and some of them never made it home. James's eyes were now filled with tears. He was looking at the white carnations in his hands. Hayes added softly, James never boasts. He never tells his stories, because real heroes are silent. They just do their duty and are forgotten. There was deep silence in the square. Only the sound of wind could be heard. Thompson slowly approached James. His face was red, his hands trembling. First he opened his mouth, but no sound came. Then he spoke in a whisper. I'm so sorry. I didn't know. I had no idea. James looked at him. There was no anger in his eyes, no disappointment, only sadness. It doesn't matter, he said softly. You were just doing your job. But Thompson wouldn't accept it. No, it matters. I humiliated you, belittled you. You're 1,000 times better person than me. James shook his head. We all make mistakes. What matters is learning. Meanwhile, other veterans in the square began gathering around James. Elderly soldiers approached him with respect. Sir, said an old sailor with a weathered face, would you sit with me? I'm a World War II veteran, but compared to what you did, my story is nothing. No, James politely declined. Every story is valuable. Every service matters. Hayes touched James's arm. James, would you like to give a speech at the ceremony? No, sir. I just want to listen. When the ceremony began, James was sitting in the front row. Thompson had repeatedly tried to apologize, and James had told him each time that he forgave him. When the speeches began, different veterans took the stage. Vietnam veterans, Gulf War veterans, Afghanistan and Iraq veterans, each told their story. The last speaker was Hayes. He also spoke about James. Today, we have a very special guest among us. He doesn't want to speak because real heroes are humble, but his presence reminds us of this. Heroism doesn't always wear a uniform. Sometimes it lives quietly among us, in plain clothes. When the ceremony ended, James stood up. He placed the 6 white carnations under the memorial statue. He'd written a small note on each. David Mills, I will always remember. Sarah Coleman, thank you for trusting me. Marcus Wright, your smile will never be forgotten. William Torres, your courage inspired me. Benjamin Clark, be proud with your family. Thomas Anderson, your friendship was precious. As he placed the flowers, he knelt down and said a short prayer. Tears streamed from his eyes. Many people from the crowd approached James. Some wanted to apologize, some to thank, and some just to shake his hand. Thompson came last. His eyes were red. Mr. Carter, he said, I won't sleep tonight. What I did to you. Thompson, James stopped him. You had good intentions. You just made a mistake. We all do. But you, a hero like you. I didn't perform heroism, James said calmly. I just did what was right. If anyone else had been there that day, they would have done the same. Thompson shook his head. No, sir. Not everyone can do the same. You're different. James smiled slightly. Maybe, but what matters isn't what we did in the past. It's how we behave today. He extended his hand to Thompson. Peace? Thompson's hands tremblingly shook James's hand. Peace. And thank you very much. When evening came, James was going home. As he walked, he felt lighter inside. For the first time in many years, he had talked about his friends, honored them. When he reached his front door, his cell phone rang. It was a number he didn't recognize. Hello? Mr. Carter, this is Sarah Mills, David Mills' wife. Colonel Hayes gave me your number. James's heart raced. David was one of the 6 soldiers he had saved. Hello, Mrs. Mills. Mr. A. Carter, the woman's voice was trembling. David used to talk about you a lot. You saved him. And today I heard what happened to you at the ceremony. James remained silent. Mr. Carter, David died 5 years ago from cancer. But before he died, he always said, thanks to James Carter, I lived 10 more years, raised my daughter, met my granddaughter. James's eyes filled with tears. Those 10 years were very precious, Mr. Carter. And when I heard today that you were disrespected at the ceremony, please know that as David's family, we were never affected by that. You will always be a hero for us. After James hung up the phone, he stood in front of his door for a long time. He looked up at the sky. Stars were shining. That night, James slept peacefully for the first time in many years, because he finally understood. Real respect doesn't come from wearing a uniform or medals. It's just a gift shown to people who do what's right. And sometimes, that gift comes from unexpected places. From a town square, from a colonel's words, or from a woman's thanks on the phone. The next morning, James woke up early as usual. He made his coffee and went out to his garden. There was something in his mailbox. On the envelope was written, Mr. James Carter, hero. A small note came out. I'm very ashamed for disrespecting you last night. Please accept this small gift I owe you. David Thompson, quote. Inside the envelope was a Veterans Day ceremony photo quote, a photo of James placing the flowers. Thompson had handwritten under the photo, true heroism is silent, like James Carter. James looked at the photo for a long time. Then he placed it next to the frames on his wall. In the other frames were photos of those 6 friends. Now there were 7 photos, 6 for lost friends, 1 for himself, who had been found. Because that day, James hadn't just regained his dignity. He had regained himself. And the most beautiful part of this story was this. This real respect needed no medals or uniforms, just a heart that did what was right. The story ended like this. But the new beginning in James's life had started that day. He no longer hid his past. He proudly honored his friends. And David Thompson, he had changed too. He no longer judged people by their appearance. He treated everyone with respect, because he had learned real heroes are not always visible. Sometimes they live quietly among us, in the most ordinary disguise, and to recognize them, all we need to do is set aside our prejudices and really look.